Welcome back to the Perfect Father Podcast. You wish you could have been a fly on the wall earlier this afternoon as my kids were making fun of me. One of the great pastimes for children to do to their parents. I'm sure that this has happened to some of you. They were making fun of my intro, and they were comparing me. The voices sound everything from Mrs. Doubtfire, Robin Williams playing Mrs. Doubtfire, or President Donald Trump. It was like, hello, Mrs. Doubtfire, or welcome to the greatest podcast the world has ever known with President Trump. I don't sound like that, I kept saying. I'm not sure what I sound like. They certainly had fun making fun of me. This, by the way, is the Perfect Father Podcast because he is the perfect father who fathers us perfectly. Hopefully you don't think that I am portraying myself as the perfect father. Not in the slightest. Hopefully, increasingly, a better dad. More loving, more caring, more consistent, all of those things. I'm excited about this invitation. I want to start with the title. It's a little different than the devotion. You're getting this podcast after I've already shared the devotion. And it is titled, Practice Self-Care. The invitation is seek your well-being. I like to go beyond just the term self-care. That's common language, right? We all understand there's been an emphasis on self-care. I don't know how long that term has been around, but for a little while, probably a couple of decades, and really emphasized, I would say, in the last decade. And I'm very grateful for it. I want to add something to it, though. I think, looking at my profession, which is counseling, which is therapy, I think sometimes we push an inadequate vision that's not sustainable. And I don't believe that as we launch into what God has for us and what He intends for us, it's enough to just be able to rely on self. We need guidance, right? We need grace, and that's what He provides. We need motivation, right? Conviction would be another word. And the power to follow through. Again, back to that verse that Paul said as he encouraged us to work out our salvation, right? We participate with the Holy Spirit who works in us both to will and to do His good pleasure. The conviction to change, the motivation to change comes from Him. I'm grateful for that. But also the power to change, to will and to do it, to follow through with it. So I believe you need guidance and grace in the process. It doesn't need to be just driven by self. That's not sustainable. That's why we've chosen the invitation to seek our well-being. See, I don't want it to end just with us. I don't want that to become centripetal. There's a lot of movements in our culture that are towards self. There's a dead end there, right? There is a lack of satisfaction and contentment when we're consumed with self. Actually, the end result is misery, I believe. We want it to be centripetal. We've talked about that. G.K. Chesterton's term that our life is a centrifugal force. That's why we have the icon, which I hope that you've noticed online, and please like and subscribe. But when you go online to the page, it's that image of that water droplet that goes down into the water and produces concentric circles, that you and I would care for those that God puts in our ways, that the impact is beyond us. So any good thing God does in us, it's to our benefit, but ultimately it's for the benefit of benefit of others and His purpose in the earth, right? His kingdom on earth. So we want it to be broader than just self. So, our verse is Psalm chapter 35, verse 27. May those who delight in my vindication shout for joy and gladness. May they always say, the Lord be exalted, who delights in the well-being of His servant. Our prayers, gracious Father, empower us to seek our well-being as you desire, so that we might increasingly experience life to its fullest and be an invitation for others to join us, to our benefit and the benefit of others. And this is particularly challenging, let me say this, because most people are conscientious and agreeable in terms of personality distribution. I think God knew what he was doing, because if we were more disagreeable and less conscientious, who knows the condition of our world? And it's not to put down people that are disagreeable. We need them. There are people that are edgier, are people that fix things and extend things and better things in our world and culture and community, so we need them. But most people are very agreeable. That means they want others to feel good. They want others to do well. And so sometimes self-care or seeking our well-being feels selfish, especially when we were not encouraged to do it growing up. If in your family of origin, especially if you were a young person, it was just like, stay out of the way. What you need, what you want, that's not encouraged. Your voice was stifled. Or perhaps when you wanted to do something to care for yourself, others said it was selfish. I hope that you understand that our perfect Father delights in your well-being. He delights in my well-being, so it's not selfish. I've used the analogy before, and it's kind of morbid, but I'll use it anyways. Did not originate with me. If you were on a plane, let's say with your 3-year-old child, and that plane was descending, let's say into the ocean, and one oxygen mask drops in between you, who would you give it to? And the conscientiousness in us, the agreeableness in us is, of course, I'd give it to the 3-year-old child, right? Want to make sure they're taken care of. Well, the end result is you pass out and you're no benefit to the child. So we have to take that oxygen for ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves so that we can be about his purpose, his mission, which is ultimately fulfilling and satisfying for us. But I think it's important to say that when we care for self, sometimes that feels counterintuitive. It feels selfish. And I want to make the argument that it's not. It's actually part of what builds our capacity to participate in his purpose. Our challenge is we're prone to deprive ourselves of basic needs, contributing to a decline in our minds, bodies, and spirit. This concept of deprivation. And I already said what might lead us to deprive ourselves is we think that self-care is selfish. And perhaps we use that as an excuse or a motivation to not take care of ourselves. I was at this conference years ago on substance use, and it was talking about preventive as substance use is so prevalent in our culture. And I was listening to this neurologist who said if he could he posed a question, if you could make one policy decision, governmental policy decision, that would help reduce substance use rates, what would it be? And he answered his own question. He said he could back it up with research, and that is, he said that he would change the start of school to later in the day for teenagers. Very interesting. That, teenagers typically need 10 plus hours of sleep as their body is going through puberty. All those physical changes. And he was saying, built around, school hours obviously are built around parent working hours. And he was making the point that one of the key contributors or primary contributors for substance use is sleep deprivation. And you think about that term, deprivation causes our bodies to crave, to cry out for relief. And it sets us up for all kinds of maladaptive decisions and behaviors. We need, just in sleep, we need 7 to 9 hours. We have that deep sleep which mends our bodies. We have that REM sleep that mends our minds, restores our cognitive abilities. We know this. So when we're talking about our basic needs, we're talking about nutrition, right? I don't have to there's so much great information out there now about nutrition. But we can both, agree that we have a culture, a society that's just addicted to sugar, addicted to carbs, that's processed to sugar. I could go on with the obesity rates, childhood rates of obesity. And so, nutrition, very important. So much good information out there. Exercise. I'm a big advocate. I'm more consistent now. Thank God. I've been less consistent at times in my life, but I'm a big believer that God has created these amazing bodies, fearfully and wonderfully made. So when I exercise, I'm getting shots of serotonin that calm me, shots of dopamine that give me energy and enthusiasm. And it's burning off that cortisol, which is that stress hormone that we take on in this sedentary culture. I think if you really looked at it, our biggest issue in terms of health is we're sedentary. We sit. We don't move around. We don't have to walk places. We don't have to bike places. Now, some cultures do that better than us. So we have to be very intentional about the movement of our bodies. Or we could talk about social connection. So much right now is driving us towards isolation. Things are at our fingertips. We used to go places to shop. Now we sit on our couch. We don't even interact with other people. How important is it to see someone at the store and smile at them, or maybe see someone from church and speak to them? So much is driving us towards isolation with social media, with things being at our fingertips. So I think that, if we're not intentional, it can affect us. So I just want to begin by saying I want us to be aware that many of our struggles, at least in part, can be traced to this concept of deprivation. Maybe it's not the complete answer, but I would argue most of the time it's part of the answer. When we're facing a particular counterproductive or maladaptive or harmful behavior or attitude that we want to change in our lives, at least part of the solution, not the entire, but part of it generally is an area where we're depriving ourselves of taking care of our well-being. So I think that's common to all of us. His invitation is to invite us to take care of ourselves in ways that He intends, that we might increasingly maximize our joyful experience of loving and serving Him and others. Our reflection begins. Pause and joyfully accept that your perfect Father delights in your well-being. That's what the psalmist said. And desires that you would take care of His child. I've invited you to repeat to yourself this exhortation from the perfect Father. Take care of my child. Take care of my child. Take care of my child. That's His words to us. I will often say that to my kids. They know this. I'm sure they make fun of it, right? The great pastime. But I'll say, take care of my son. Or I might pose a question. What are you doing to take care of my son? Take care of my daughter. I'll say it to Annabelle. Take care of my granddaughter. I got to spend some time with her yesterday. It was my lengthiest babysitting for about 3 hours, and we watched Toy Story and Frozen, and we ran around the house, and it was a blast. So I'll say the same thing to her. I'll say it to my friends. Take care of my friend. Or what are you doing to take care of my friend? Our reflection continues. Allow Holy Spirit to reveal specific ways that you are depriving yourself of basic needs, of sleep, nutrition, exercise, quiet time, social connection, etc. Seek His guidance for specific ways that He is leading you to alter your behaviors and lifestyles for your well-being, such as a better sleep schedule, more nutritional foods, activities that provide joy and exercise, intentional connection with caring others, intimate time set aside with Him, etc. So I'm not going to get specific with this because, it's different for different seasons of life. For my mom, her exercise in her 80s, she's 81, is she walks her dog outside. And that's what she needs in terms of physical exercise. I just say I need his guidance and grace. And if we'll quiet ourselves and we have the humility to allow his guidance, right? To begin to make some minor adjustments, and that's all it takes. I don't know what it's like for you, but I can tell you, for myself as an example, when I address one area, it generally betters other areas. Let me give a real simple example. I've been more consistent with my exercise. I have exercise equipment in my house. It's across the living room, so there's no excuse. It's right there. When I exercise, I eat better. I want to see some of the results of my exercise. I want to feel better. I want to lose some weight. And so it affects other areas of my life. And this is true. When we talked about exposure therapy a few episodes ago, I said that's one of the things that's amazing about exposure therapy. When you and I will voluntarily face something we fear, it will diminish fears in other areas of our life. And it's the same in self-care. We start addressing things that we know we need to adjust incrementally, and it affects other areas. It actually provides motivation for change in other areas. And I want to encourage you to not get stuck in a goal mode, but set objectives, right? I could say I have a goal of getting more sleep, but that's a goal. An objective is a bedtime, right? It's quantifiable. It's measurable. So whatever that is, set an objective and get some support. That's where our reflection continues. Share a specific objective you formulate, back to objective, not just goal, to better care for yourself with a caring friend so that they may support you in following through. Persevere in the changes long enough to experience positive outcomes and celebrate them with those around you. Get support. You're worth being supported. And I always say caring person, right? Caring friend, someone who has proven themselves in this way, someone who loves you for who you are and also encourages you in who you are becoming. We need support. And we need perseverance so that we can begin to experience some of the positive outcomes for following through. I want one area, just disclosure, I've already kind of mentioned it, so you could probably figure it out, but I've been trying to go to bed earlier. I've set a specific time. My kids make fun of me for it. I'm not going to tell you the time, that's not important. And it is pretty early, but I get up. Pretty early in the evening, but I get up pretty early. When I talk about, praying for you, I take that very seriously. So it takes a portion of my morning, and non-agenda worship takes a portion of my morning. So does his living and active word, following non-agenda worship, where my heart is set in place and I go to the word and he speaks to me, and then I launch out into prayers of blessing and protection for myself and others, for you. And so I have to be intentional. And I haven't always been the best at that. And I'm seeing the positive outcomes with more sustainable energy. So we know that these outcomes follow actions over time, adjustments that we make over time. Our reflection continues. As you better take care of yourself, expect increased energy and enthusiasm, decreased tension and stress, increased concentration and calmness, decreased avoidance and procrastination, something I'm prone to, and increased health and vitality. I want you to anticipate and imagine the outcomes. That's vision that sees down the road, that those habits turn into a lifestyle over time. Not perfection, right? We always say progress. And if I miss something today, I just add it to tomorrow. I'm not shaming myself into submission. By the way, that doesn't work. That's not sustainable. So if I miss something today, I don't do it like I wanted to, I intended to. I'm just going to add it to tomorrow. And I celebrate any advancement, thanking Him for His grace and His guidance being operable in my life. Our reflection concludes. As you periodically slip back into habits that deprive you of your basic needs, gently remind yourself, I will seek my well-being. I will seek my well-being. I will seek my well-being. We will seek our well-being to increase our experience and expression of life to its fullest. I love you. See you next time.